Singapore, which is known for its clean streets and well-run systems, has worked hard to create the image of an ideal country. But there is more going on behind the shiny surface. Let's have a look at the dark truth Singapore holds that is going to be extremely challenging for the country in upcoming days. Former Singaporean Prime Minister Lee Kuan Yew is often referred to as the man who is largely responsible for Singapore's economic boom. Singapore became a center for multinational firms penetrating the Asian market because it needed either foreign investment or a qualified workforce. He encouraged his fellow Singaporeans to put in extra effort by reminding them that hard work is the only thing that can help the tiny country advance, and the government has been echoing this message ever since via national productivity campaigns aimed squarely at the populace. But now, there's a big challenge that's been hitting Singapore. Singapore's population is getting older quickly. It has the lowest birth rate in the world. Singaporeans are worried, overworked, and burnt out. A growing number of Western companies were drawn to Singapore because of its advantageous location as a naval club, as well as the country's stable and efficient government and extremely business-friendly policies, such as tax exemption for foreign companies for 10 years and no unions. Since Singapore's independence in the 1980s, the country's population has more than tripled, thanks in large part to the country's liberal immigration policies, which have brought in tens of thousands of people annually. These immigrants include both low-skilled laborers and highly trained professionals, the latter of whom are responsible for the development of the Grove. But now the case is different. The major problem is that fear of failure runs deep in Singaporean society due to the country's perception of itself as a weak and defenseless nation that must strive harder than its neighbors just to keep up. Despite this, Singapore is extremely progressive, has a very good quality of life, and has one of the highest GDPs per capita in the world. Did you know that how well you do at a test in primary school can decide which high school and then university you end up in? And if you want to work for the public service, you have to show your test results from when you were 16? So it's not a surprise that students in Singapore are a lot more stressed and more prone to anxiety than in other countries. And it doesn't get much better as an adult. Despite the efforts of the government, the country does have limited resources, and even though Singapore has high salaries, this does make certain things comparatively more expensive than elsewhere. A good example of that is housing, because space is, with the limited size of the land and an ever-growing population, is one of the scarcest resources in Singapore. Private housing is extremely expensive and unaffordable for most people apart from those earning way above average. So the government has been building public housing and selling apartments, or actually renting them for 99 years at a relatively cheap price, so that every family can have a place to live. But the truth is that in recent years the government has not been able to build enough houses to satisfy the demand, and so waitlistness for new flats is desperately oversubscribed. Singapore is now experiencing a rapidly escalating housing bubble, in which the living situation is becoming a huge stress factor for a growing percentage of people. And the fact that life is so expensive and competitive is a key reason why Singapore has the lowest fertility rate in the world, even lower than in Japan. In surveys, people often cite financial reasons as to why they don't want to have kids. And this is particularly problematic for Singapore because one of its growth strategies has always been constant population growth. But since Singaporeans are having fewer and fewer children, this growth is literally unsustainable. Therefore, Singapore needs immigration because it already has a rapidly aging population, and without immigration, it will soon be a nation of senior citizens. Even if people keep working hard as they always have, without the expanding population, it won't be enough. And if people don't feel financially secure about their future, they won't be happy with always more and more people coming in because life is already competitive enough as it is. And so the success and the future of Singapore are more uncertain than it seems.